Hello everybody, it's Master Sergeant McCourt, finally doing another video. I'm sure most of you were wondering if I was ever going to do another video. So, pretty much to be brief, and fast forward from the last video I did in November of 2020, I have since taken a new assignment. I am now the Health Professions Recruiter for the Air Force Reserve in Washington, D.C. Cover a pretty large area ranging from like southeastern Pennsylvania all the way through West Virginia, Maryland, parts of Delaware. So pretty big area. To be honest, I was pretty surprised today when I saw that I had 146 followers and lots of questions and replies, and I wanted to apologize to everybody for not getting back to you sooner. The YouTube video was definitely an experiment to see if I was going to attract any kind of attention, which apparently 146 followers is 146 more than I thought I was going to get. So I appreciate everyone subscribing to the page. Again, sorry that I hadn't done video sooner. Now that I've transitioned into a health professions role, I'm looking to do more videos geared towards medical officers. I do want to stress that I am the recruiter for the Air Force Reserve Health Professions in DC, again covering that pretty much that whole northeastern coast. Then my counterpart covers everything from New Jersey, New York, and all the way north up to Maine. Anyhow, I did see that you guys asked a lot of questions. I wanted to give a shout out to Sergeant Flynn for taking the time to answer all those questions. That was awesome. So where was I going with my previous comment? Basically, I just want to let you all know that even though I'm the health professions recruiter, I'm making these videos obviously to help everyone out and not just the folks in my area. So if you have interest, if you want us to talk to a recruiter, you can drop your name and zip code in the comments, and I can reach out or at least provide you with a good contact number for the Air Force Reserve. Currently, if you didn't want to go that route, you could also call 1-800-257-1212. You'll get an online representative who will go through the eligibility questions with you. And if you're determined to be eligible for the Air Force Reserve at that point, you'll be forwarded to your local recruiter. Now, you can also use the Google tool. You can search for your recruiter if you put in Air Force Reserve and then followed by the name of your city. I'm sure every Air Force Reserve recruiter has taken the time to make their information available through Google Business as well. So the purpose, more or less, of today's video was to jump back on, let you know that didn't forget, I've been meaning to do a video. It took me way too long. As far as future videos, like I said, I'm going to be talking about health professionals and different ways that you can join the Air Force Reserve as a commissioned officer. For today, so that we have some kind of information to share for the commissioned officer route, I would like to talk about nurses. And then my next video will be in regards to physicians, flight surgeons, and so on. So the Air Force Reserve has several different corps. Basically, for each different section of medical, we have nursing, we have medical corps for docs, we have our dental corps for dentists, our medical services corps for our healthcare administrators, and then we have a biomedical services corps, which is your physical therapists and different specialty areas that don't fall specifically under like physician assistant, etc. So for today, we're going to talk about the Air Force Reserve Nurse Corps. Not going to get too in the weeds about the program in itself, because each person's resume is different, each situation is different. So I just want to go over the general eligibility requirements to become a nurse and a commissioned officer in the Air Force Reserve. So currently, we are looking for, specifically in the local area, we're looking to fill flight nurse billets. So I'm going to talk specifically about the flight nurse billet. because that is the need for the Air Force Reserve mission, not just here, but seems to be across the Air Force Reserve Command. So, general eligibility requirements. If we start from the top, to be a commissioned officer, which any nurse is going to be a commissioned officer, you do have to be a U.S. citizen. So I do get a lot of permanent residents call who are highly and super qualified, but still waiting on citizenship. So I just have to basically foot stomp. You can definitely join. Recently had an individual who originally called me as a permanent resident and had their citizenship application pending. 8 months later, called me back with a naturalization certificate, and we're currently working on that person joining as a physician. So definitely can wait, and you can definitely give us a call once you have your citizenship. The next big requirement is pretty much any commissioned officer is going to require a 4-year college degree. For the nursing corps, you specifically have to have your bachelor's of science in nursing. That's going to make you qualified to, number one, be a commissioned officer because you have a bachelor's degree, and then number two, specific specialization in nursing to qualify you for the nurse corps. Now, like I said earlier, there's different, everyone takes different paths. So if your first degree was like, for example, your BS is in biology, and then you decided to do an MSN, which is your Master's of Science in Nursing, you would still qualify because you have your bachelor's degree. We would just have to look specifically at your resume and see, what area of the hospital you're working, how many years or months of experience that you have to determine if you'll meet the requirement for the nurse corps. So as far as education, without getting too in the weeds, basically I would say 80 to 90% have a bachelor's of science in nursing. Again, we will consider on a case-by-case basis if you jumped from the like a liberal arts bachelor's degree straight to the MSN, Master's of Science in Nursing. We'll definitely take a look at that to determine if you're eligible. Other than that, I don't want to be repetitive based on my other videos. A lot of the qualification questions are going to be the same as far as like no prior legal history. What is unique to the officer world is waivers for moral violations are different. In the enlisted world, you basically have a chance to qualify for a waiver if you meet the different requirements. We would have to take a look at your court documents, see the disposition, have you write a statement, and for the most part, you may qualify for a waiver on the enlisted side. On the officer side, it's a little bit different. Different regulation for a commissioned officer. However, if you have anything of like a DUI or any violation of that level within 10 years, there's no waiver. So pretty much anything that happened more than 10 years ago, take a look at it. We'll still check the court documents and the disposition. If it happened over 10 years ago, we'll take that into consideration. A waiver is not required. Anything that happened within the last 10 years, though, that is considered a morals violation will not be waived. So that also, not just morals waivers, but any waiver for commissioned officer, without getting in the weeds again of the back office processes, pretty much any waiver on the officer side has to go up to the general level at a command level or headquarters Air Force Reserve level. So these waivers are definitely, we're going to look at every situation. We're going to look at the regulations and see if you qualify. In most cases, though, anything morally that happened within the last 10 years is not going to be something that's waived. And it's not even a question of recruiter discretion or flight chief discretion. It's just based on Department of Defense instruction, you will not get a waiver if there's any reportable derogatory information in the last 10 years. Another big difference with officers, with health professional officers, let's not confuse, because I want to be clear, health professional officers have different age limits that do not apply to pilots or line officers outside of health professions. Okay, so the Air Force Reserve age limit that has been set for health professionals is still going to fall under the same as the enlisted side for the most part. However, if you're trying to join into a job that's considered a critical wartime skill, like for example flight nursing, the age limit is extended to commissioning prior to your 48th birthday. So it's not necessarily 47, because you could be 47 and you can commission right up to the day before your birthday, before you turn 48, and still be eligible. So again, that is one of the major differences, is the age limit. It is not across the board and does not apply to every job. So like in the nursing world, the clinical nurse, that is not considered a critical wartime skill currently, because the nurse corps for clinical nurses is actually almost 100% full across the Air Force Reserve. So flight nursing, not as full, and still basically a critical wartime skill. So all that said, again, every situation is different. In the officer sessions world, it's best to give me a call, your recruiter a call locally, and we'll look at all things considered. Again, with age, there are adjusted age calculations done. So if you've previously served and your time served subtracted from your current age meets the age limit, you're able to proceed. Okay. So in the nurse corps, we talked about some of the general eligibility. I want to talk more now in regards to your resume and how important it is. Most people don't understand, or not even that don't understand, but don't realize that, hey, I'm joining the military, I don't need a resume. It's the military. Can't speak for all the branches, but for the Air Force Reserve and the Air Force, we're looking at your resume very closely. We're not just looking at the job title, we're looking at the quality of the bullets in that resume, because we're really relying heavily, not having seen your work, we're relying heavily on your resume to make sure that you possess the skills that the Air Force Reserve needs to fill these different nursing billets. So if you're going to sit down, if you're going to call a recruiter, I'm going to tell you now, the first thing that any good health professions recruiter is going to ask for is a copy of your resume. The reason for that is everyone has different background in nursing. The Air Force Reserve has specific needs that we're looking for in each nurse applicant in order to fill, for example, the flight nurse role. As a flight nurse, we are looking that applicants have to have experience either definitely in an acute care hospital bedside environment. Specifically, the command chief nurse is looking for experience in emergency room, adult ICU, or you could be like a med-surg nurse, but basically looking for a nurse that possesses the skills bedside, an acute care environment in the hospital, basically. So what doesn't count? What doesn't count towards the requirement is home health care aides, hospice care, as well as like if you're working in a jail or in the prisons. Again, this is just coming straight out of the regulation and from the command chief nurse's policy memo. Again, I don't want to say across the board that if you don't meet those specific requirements that you won't be able to join. We've had nurses in all different realms, whether you're in the cardiac ICU or in a trauma center. Pretty much, if you're in a hospital and you're working bedside, you have a shot. So it's definitely worth putting together a resume, make that resume shine, show us your technical skill set, right? Because the Air Force Reserve, again, we rely on what you're putting on your resume to demonstrate your work skills, your bedside skills, your bedside time management. So your resume for the Air Force Reserve may look a little bit different than what you're used to putting together. The Air Force Reserve, again, we're not looking for a resume that shows what I would call fluff, or those bullets that may mean something in like a corporate nursing or in a hospital type setting, the administrative type bullets, they're all great, right? But for the purpose of this application, we're looking for technical skill sets, bedside management, and again, don't want to be repetitive, but tailor your resume to really capture your technical competencies, any certifications, like if you have basic life support, BLS, if you have advanced cardiac life support, CCRN. There's so many acronyms out there for nurses. I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but if you're a nurse and you're listening to this, you know what I'm talking about. So make sure that under certifications, under training, if you hold any of those certificates, make sure that you're updating the resume to show when you received it, when it expires. If it's set to expire, you may want to, ahead of time, renew your BLS or your DEA certificate or whatever the case may be, so that your resume reflects that you're current on all your training. So we went over morals. We talked about resume. Pretty much the process in itself to join is about, I would say, 8 to 10 months. In reality, it's about 6 to 8, but I always like to add a couple months in there just to make sure if we have any hiccups at MEPS, if our administrative headquarters is running behind, whether it be on a grade computation or a scroll. Want to make sure that we're setting proper expectations. So normally we say about a year, just to throw it out there so that you have a visual expectation of, okay, over the next year this is going to happen. I don't want to go over the whole process on this particular video. Just kind of wanted to touch a little bit on nursing, on the requirements. So just to take a step back, we talked about some of the qualification requirements, pretty much the same. I highlighted some of the differences being in age, citizenship is required, education, and your resume. The other thing that we're looking at is you have to have completed your NCLEX as a nurse and have at least 12 months of work experience. So that's why we're looking at the resume for a few reasons. We're looking at when we licensed, and of course we'll pull a nurse's report on you to make sure that your licenses are current and unencumbered. We'll also take a look at when you were licensed, when you started working, and we're going to make sure that you have at least 12 months experience in your current job. If not, we can get started with you as soon as the 8-month mark. So if you call me, you've been on the job for 8 months, being our process takes almost a year. By the time you're ready to take your oath and join the team, you will have completed your year of experience. Again, 12 months, your NCLEX board. One of the nice areas within the education and the constructive service credit for nurses is there's quite a few nurses that go from being an RN with an ASN or associate's degree in nursing, and basically you can be licensed as a nurse. You can be a registered nurse with your ASN, your associate's degree in nursing. With that said, you can't join until you have your bachelor's degree. However, when we're taking a look at work service and constructive service credit, the time that you were licensed does go back and count. So your associate's degree doesn't count as far as grade relevancy. And again, I don't want to get too in the weeds of grade relevancy, but what's most important is when we're putting your employment experience on the Air Force Form 24, which is your request to commission into the Air Force Reserve, we're going to validate your work experience, and if you did have your registered nurse license, we will go back and count that. So for anyone watching that's a registered nurse that has their ASN or ADN, however you want to call it, go get your BSN and give us a call. Definitely always in need of nurses, and again, you have nothing to lose because you'll be have furthered your education. You'll be opening doors to the Air Force Reserve to come and serve as a nurse. Other than that, every nurse is a direct commission, so there is no ASVAB test. There's no test score requirements for the nurse corps. The direct commission is based solely on your level of education plus your constructive service credit. And that's the very first step of the process, is to take a look at your resume, validate your work experience, as well as validate your education and nursing license. And we upload all that information to the system, and the system will do a grade calculation. So if you're a brand new nurse with years of experience and a BSN, most likely coming in as an O1. If you have 2 or more years of constructive service credit time, you'll be coming in as an O2 with a BSN. Now, one thing to note is every nurse with a BSN, even if you have 10 or 12 or more years as a nurse, you'll be capped out at the O2 level. O3 comes once you have your MSN, your Masters of Science in Nursing. So based solely on the MSN, you would come in as an O3 captain. So very important that your resume reflects credible work experience, and that you present your recruiter with official college transcripts for all your nursing education, so that you can get the proper military grade. All right. After we do your grade computation, you're automatically put on a federal scroll, which is basically the federal government through the Department of Defense looking at your application and doing a background investigation and vetting your package, basically to acknowledge that you can be a commissioned officer in the armed services. Now, if you're prior service and you're looking at this video and you're like, I'm already scrolled in the Army or in the Navy or whatever branch, every scroll is valid for that branch. So if you call me from another branch, unfortunately, you would have to wait that scroll. And the only reason I say unfortunately is a scroll is mandatory, and it does take about 4 to 6 months to go from start to finish. So just to throw that out there, that's why our process, we say, takes about a year, because when you're looking at the grade computation, the scroll's another 4 to 6 months, interview, and everything that goes along with this application process, looking at about a year total. Medical is the same as on the enlisted side. You're going to take, the only difference is we call it a commissioning physical. For the most part, those requirements are going to be pretty much the same, unless you're trying to be a flight nurse. Then that'll be a commissioning physical initiated, and then a flying class 3, initial flying class 3 determination will be done once your MEPS physical is completed. But pretty much, you can look online and you can reference the regulations yourself. It's public knowledge, but the Department of Defense 6130.03 talks about commissioning and enlisting medical standards for appointment or enlistment into the armed services. So, recruiters don't make up the medical rules. I promise everyone that has ever gotten mad that they were disqualified, specifically with me, I try to explain I don't write the regulations. It's likely if you're calling a recruiter and you've already referenced that regulation, that if it's annotated in that regulation as a disqualifier, you can let your recruiter know. There's definitely a medical record review process that we can follow and allow the doctors to make their determination. But not a bad idea to reference that. If you're watching this video and you have anything like asthma or bronchitis or any history of surgeries, ER visits, that's something that you may want to take into account, because the process is going to go from being like 8 to 10 months to like a year and a half. And you're going to be required to get any and all medical records, pharmacy records, etc., to get past that hurdle. Definitely not discouraging anyone from pursuing that route. Just saying, if you're watching the video and you have an idea that you may be disqualified medically, wouldn't be bad to check into it. Talk to your recruiter, tell them up front what you got going on, so that the recruiter is equipped with the information that we'll need to help your process go as smooth as possible. I can say that currently the MEPS process is slowing down and becoming a little bit more difficult, because we're using a system called Genesis, where MEPS can pull pretty much anything and everything that's publicly available. So if you've been to an ER and the hospital is contracted with this Genesis system, your information would be shared, and the doctors at MEPS would be able to look at your pre-screen, but also see anything that you may have forgot and or omitted. So when you're filling out that pre-screen, definitely important that you're thorough, that you're upfront and honest. You annotate any and all medications and any medical concerns that are specifically questioned on that pre-screen, so that you can get through MEPS as quick as possible, given all of the conditions. So again, I didn't foresee talking for 25 minutes. Future videos are going to be shorter videos. I'm going to highlight specific jobs within the Air Force Reserve health professions. If you do have any questions, I am going to be checking my comments weekly, and I will try to reply to you as timely as possible. If there's any specific information that you'd like to see, again, I'm going to try to do one video a week now moving forward to try and address any questions that anyone has. In regards to all the questions that were previously asked on my prior two videos, I'm going to go ahead and apologize and just be upfront and honest. It's going to be hard for me to go back and answer all the questions for the last year and a half. But anything new, I will definitely try to address those questions, and I may even be able to go live here in the next week or so to interact with any of you who are interested in connecting live to do a question answer on live video. So thank you for watching the video. Thanks for subscribing. Again, my goal going forward is to make this as interesting as possible, to answer and address anyone's questions, and go from there. So Master Court signing off. Hope you all have a great rest of your week. Bye bye.